Hey everybody, just uploading a short video here about a mod I did recently for a friend's RGB modded NES. We thought it might be good to document a little bit what we were doing. And so for anybody who happens to have these bug problems, well, I mean, for posterity, here it is. So today we're installing the INTFIX 10 and the CLOCKFIX 10, these little mod boards, into an NES, which is previously installed with Tim Worthington's version 4.0 RGB board. These little things will fix some bugs that you'll see here in a second. The CLOCKFIX fixes issues with interference between the PPU and the RGB board. The problem is actually a little bit rare. The INTFIX corrects a bug where the RGB board, I believe it like misinterprets the signal coming out of the INT or the NMI. It depends on what sheet you're looking at. That pin of the PPU, it's pin 19. It kind of gets confused, and that can create problems with color palette choices. As I said before, we didn't see any of the clock stuff, but we put it in there anyway, and there's footage of it now. So if you're getting a little confused and would like to see it done, well, here it is. Yeah, but you'll see that we do have a problem with regards to the palette in like here Final Fantasy, as you'll see. When you exit the building, the grass is white and not green. But you can see these boards are pretty tiny. They aren't big, but with a little finesse and a little patience, you can pull it off and you can make it look nice and clean. If I can do it, you can too. Here we go. It says to locate, there's a capacitor. If you look at your instructions, which you hopefully have downloaded, it says here there's a capacitor that runs in between where the clock circuit is generated and the PPU. Of course, it's not one for one, because why would it be? So they say to look for capacitor 45 right here, which is this here. And on your board, it's right here, right near this LS139, which I think is an open collector multiplexer, and the expansion port. So right here, and using your multimeter in continuity mode, you can see where it connects to pin. Let's put our multimeter in, or multimeter, as is your want, into continuity mode, which on the PPU is pin 18. And let's see, is this it? Nope. Is this it? No. Where does the clock go? Okay. So it determines that on the schematic, we brought this up a little earlier, it's C4 on the schematic. On the actual board, it's C45, which you flip it around, it's right here, right there. There's C45. And I currently have one of my multimeter probes in pin 18 of this socket. And on this leg of the capacitor, we got a connection. So what we're going to do is we are going to pop this up and wire this here to the input of the CLOCKFIX board, and the output will be wired to that pin there. And that is how that will work. All right, so I'm warming up my desoldering gun, and I'm going to take it out so we have a nice big bit of leg to work with here, because they really shoved it in good and tight. So we're going to make sure we get a nice big leg that we can make a connection onto to get a fly wire off of, so we can connect it to our little mod board. So here we go. This will go here. Let's see, we'll make sure we get the right point off there. It's going to be that right there, that solder pad. So, of course, veterans, you know what this is. We're going to retin this, but for people who aren't, We're going to get that on there. I don't have a ton of depth space, and I also didn't want to remove this because there's a lot of wires. It's kind of delicate, and they left me a lot of slack in the wire, so I don't really feel a need to completely disassemble that. It should be easy to work around. So this is, I could do a little bit of this here. And a little bit of extra solder, so we got fresh there. Let's make sure this is warmed up. Yep, it sure is. I'm going to turn it up just a smidge. That should be good. All right, let's make sure we don't get the wire in the way. And let's move. Okay. And let's see if we can bend that up. Let's see. It's a little hard to see, but you can kind of see what I'm doing here is that I just want this leg to come up. I want to use this leg. So it'll let me. I think there might be just a little bit of solder hanging on. In which case, we just get our solder wick. If I could, there we go. You can tell I used it for another job previously, very recently, and I didn't cut it off. There we go. Let's see if we can get the rest of this. I think we might have freed it. Let's see if that's all nice and freed, and I think it is. Yep. Oh, look how nice that moves. Look at that. Now we got a ton. See, I originally was going to cut it with flush cutters at the end, but then I thought, you know, that might not leave me with enough space to comfortably wire something on. So what I'm going to do too eventually too is after I have a fly wire going from here to the mod board, and I might put in a little bit of hot glue right there just to make sure, because it's only holding on by the one single wire, and you know, that might not be quite enough, and we want to make sure it's nice and stable. So I don't know. We'll see how it feels once everything's done. So now it's time to cut some wires, and that's boring. So let's zoom in real quick up here. This little leg here, you can see I'm grabbing onto it. This is going to be the out. This is going to be labeled to the to in here. It's going out to the in of here. So your in wire to here. There you go. And then your out will go just right back into that through hole. And luckily for us too, we have very convenient access to ground and 5 volts. Right here is this whole plane here is a 5-volt rail, but we have a really handy test point here, or something where a capacitor would go normally. We can just get that right out of there. And ground, the bottom part of these 2 legs are ground, and I mean obviously all this is ground too, but your RF shield is going to be sitting on that, so less I mean, you could if you wanted to. It certainly is a lot easier, but I'm just going to use the legs so everything stays nice and tidy inside the shield. So let's get that done. Okay. This is the 5-volt line. Okay. And then the input here, I've pre-tinned it. Okay, make sure we don't get that. That's on there. And then our out is going to go in here. There it is. Oops. Get in there. Yes, sweetie. and then I'm gonna tack this down and then go at it from the other side to solder it in. I found a really nice, to me it seems like a nice convenient place to install this. You know, keep it from moving around would be right here on this LS139. I believe it's an open collector multiplexer. But we're going to just do a little foam mounting tape just to get it nice and make sure it doesn't go anywhere and doesn't flop around. And there should be plenty of clearance with the RF shield. That's, of course, a problem. Well, not a problem, but it's you know, it's something to be overcome when installing the RGB mod on the for the Tim Worthington mod, because there's just not a lot of room if you choose to keep the RF shield. But luckily, yes, right here on this chip or over here is a very convenient place to mount these little boards. So that's what I'm doing right now. Ta-da! It is all set and all installed. Yeah, it's only 4 wires in and out for the clock. It's very simple to do. It's just a matter of sussing out where that one capacitor is and finagling that leg up. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're going to be installing what's called the INTFIX for this board. You'll see I have the board up and lifted out. It was socketed by the fine folks at Retro RGB?
Retro Digital.
Retro Digital. And however, socketing this part means that it's hard to get to the trace that we need to under here. If you look here at the paper that we have, this is a printout of what's available. You have to cut a trace. This trace is right next to pin 19 of the PPU. Here's our PPU. The trace that we want to cut is right under the chip. So, unfortunately, that means we're going to have to desolder the whole thing to get at the trace, which should be fine. I mean, if this is something you're comfortable doing, desoldering chips, you should know, you know how to do this, to be careful. And it's more, at this point, it just can be kind of tedious. But if you don't know much about this, I will say, there are other, YouTube videos online, I'm sure, about desoldering chips and safe removal. But of course, the thing to do is slow and steady. Slow and steady. I have a desoldering gun. We're going to go at it with all these holes. And then what I like to do is add some flux and use desoldering braid to make sure that there are no parts of the leg that are still hanging onto the board, because we don't want to lift pads. We don't want to lift traces. If you do that, that is something that can be overcome, but to save yourself the most amount of grief, slow and steady. So we're going to do that now. You'll notice too that I'm sort of wiggling it back and forth as I suck it up, so I make sure I kind of get around the pin as I suck up the solder from where it is. Oh, look how clean it's coming out. This one, not so much. This side, I think we got a couple little hangers on maybe. You can see there's still some solder there. So we're going to go at it with the little braid right there. But this side, look how loosey-goosey. Are you still on the phone with your wife?
No, she hung up.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure what happened.
Okay. Look at that. We're back, baby. We got it. Okay, so I did desolder it. I thought maybe for a second. Again, this required a lot of, careful prying and making sure that all the solder is gone. There's still some solder on there, but it all kind of wheeled out. There was one here, one leg that I thought had broken off, but it had just been bent up. And we got it. There it is. We're good to go, baby. Now to cut a trace. So the next part we have to do is we have to get rid of this little resistor here, because we're going to need these points to attach wires to. If you look over here on the board, it's this little guy right here. And people have different strategies for getting rid of surface mount components like that one. I'm a big fan of the chip quick method, which is this stuff here. And this is a very low temperature lead solder melt. So it melts at incredibly low temperatures, and that allows you to basically take the component off while it's still molten. Yeah, that's the way I like to do it. Although this piece is very tiny, I'm going to try to do it without, because sometimes chip quick can make a mess. And with something this tiny, with something with only 2 joints, I'm thinking it might not be necessary. But let's give it a shot, eh? We're going to add some fresh solder to both sides. And there. Let's see if we do that there. And we're going to see if we can't just pry this little baby off. We'll get it there. Let's try it this way. Just go back and forth until that little bugger just comes off. But that is not what is happening. So I think we're going to have to do a little bit of chip quick. Okay, so I'm just putting on a little bit of flux right here on each end. We don't want to make a huge mess of this because, again, it's only 2 joints. We don't need to go crazy. And that just helps the solder to flow more readily. And you're going to, oops, that broke apart. And you're going to see how quickly this stuff melts. So here we go. It's going to go right here and here. Oopsies. Yeah, you see what I mean about it being a mess? But there it goes. There's the part. Came right off. It's not very much solder, so you're not going to see a lot. But you can see there. Oh, there it is. And there, let's see if we can get this in focus here. Can you see the end here? I don't know if you can. Yeah, there's really not a lot. Maybe if I turn it around. There's some there. Yeah, there's a little bit. You can kind of see there in the end that it got a little bit. Though, again, there wasn't much because it's a very tiny component, so it's not, you know. All right, so you have to excuse me because when we recorded this part previously, the audio was a little bit borked. So I'm doing this is a post voiceover here. But what I did here was, once I had cleared all that stuff up, I just kind of wired point A to point B. The documentation is pretty clear about where things need to go. There's not really much finesse related, it's connecting puzzle pieces at this point. But as you can see, it works. The grass is green like it should be. Again, when you are putting these little boards in to your Nintendo, if you're keeping the RF shield, I assume you are, make sure there's plenty of clearance. You definitely don't want anything shorting out. And if you are maybe a little bit worried about things shorting out, you can always put on a little bit of Kapton tape over the top and making sure, that even if something kind of comes loose, it won't short out. But I do really recommend that foam mounting tape. It tends to hold on pretty well. At least I haven't had any problems with it. But yeah, thanks again for watching. Good luck if you are attempting this yourself. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I mean, I know it seems that Tim Worthington's pretty on hand with these sorts of things too. But yeah, I hope this was, that somebody found this helpful. So here it is. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.